Vicky Pryce is an international economist and business consultant. Vicky, welcome back to the programme. How critical is this unpopular budget in France?
It's really important right now, given that France is facing quite a slowdown in growth. And if, in addition, we get quite a substantial sort of fiscal austerity budget passed, then that will, in many ways, make things worse for businesses and consumers. I mean, consumers have been benefiting recently from low inflation, and they seem to be a little bit more confident as a result. Business has suffered quite a lot from everything that's been happening, high costs, and of course the worsening international environment with tariffs being threatened by President Trump, and also seeing what's going on in Germany. So generally, I mean, the outlook for France has been downgraded a number of times by anyone who's doing forecasts, expecting less than 1% for 2025. So this budget will, to a considerable extent, make things worse. But what it might do, if it does go through, and capital markets perhaps get a little bit more satisfied that it is a sustainable budget, then perhaps some of the interest rates will be coming down that the government has to borrow on. But that is really quite wishful thinking right now, given the political pressures that Michel Barnier is under.
So maybe wishful thinking, inflation lowering, but France's borrowing costs have been rising. How worrying is that, and why does it matter?
Well, they haven't been rising that far. It's true that having your debt rating rethought and downgraded is a bit of an issue for France, but it has happened to a number of countries before, and they've managed to borrow quite easily. So I think we need to bear that in mind. But of course, as inflation is falling, if interest rates stay high, then in real terms, that borrowing costs you quite a bit. But bear in mind, I mean, we are talking about borrowing in terms of 10-year yields in France just under 3%. So it's not terribly dissimilar to people have been talking about Greece, where Greece is borrowing. Admittedly, you don't want to necessarily compare it with Greece. I'm talking to you from Athens, and the Greeks don't quite like those comparisons. But it is about 90 basis points above where Germany is. But there is no doubt, if there is a crisis, I think the ECB and the EU and the Eurozone will actually intervene somehow to ease things. We do know that there has been now an extra fund that's been set up to ensure that certainly the ECB, the Eurozone, are able to intervene somehow and ease some of those interest pressures. But I don't think those interest pressures are that significant. I think the real concern is not so much on the economic side. I think the real concern is much more on the political side.
And on that, briefly, Vicky, what is at stake here for President Emmanuel Macron, especially if he loses his Prime Minister, Michel Barnier, in a potential no-confidence vote?
It's a really interesting question, because you could, of course, appoint someone else, or there could be elections, of course, that are called. And for him, that is going to be a bit of a problem. I mean, already, as we know, there is no majority for him in the National Assembly since the vote that we saw a little while ago, and that's been a bit of a problem for him. The question for him, of course, if he does call an election, and is, he's got a problem of not being able to stand for a second term. So that's going to be a bit of an issue for him. So I would suspect that he will not want to do that. So he's going to be watching things very carefully. And as we've heard, there's already been concessions in the budget. I think probably there'll be more in order to avoid that vote of no confidence next week.
Vicky Pryce, thanks so much for joining us.